Hello friends, I am Hussein Laghari, and today we are here to discuss Russian invasion on the Ukraine. It is current issue and like burning issue, and most of people are talking about it. That what is happening over there and how people of Ukraine are facing this situation, and you know it's a difficult situation for them to face such a strong army and for a country which was not prepared enough to face such war or such superiority. So today we will try to explore the causes of this war, the causes of this hostility, that how Russia became so aggressive to attack its neighbor, and Ukraine, which is being part of Soviet Union, and it is being like an ally to Russia, and how things been changed, and how Russia has attacked Ukraine, and how things were become so difficult for both to maintain peace. So let's move for the next slide. So I have presented map of Ukraine, and I just want you to know that where Ukraine is located and how it looks on the map. So first, I would like to tell you that Ukraine is second largest country of Europe by area with population of over 44 million. So after Russia, it is second largest country, and it is located in Eastern Europe. And about, I want to tell you about its people, that Ukrainian people are Eastern slaves by origin. So this is a map before you. You can see the bordering countries, or the countries which have borders, like these are Russia, Belarus, Poland, and Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Moldova. And on the southern side, it has Black Sea. So before I talk about this conflict, I want you to know that how Russia has been expanding, about start of its expansion. First, we would like to discuss about the start of Russian state, that how Russian state was started. Each slaves are part of Slavic tribes, the Russians, and so other countries or the people in Eastern Europe are basically Eastern slaves. So customarily, slaves are subdivided into East slaves, chiefly Russians, Ukrainians, and Belarusian; West slaves, chiefly like Poles and Czechs, Slovaks, and Vents or Swords; and the South slaves, chiefly Serbs, Croats, Bosnians, Slovenians, Macedonians, and Montenegrins. So these all people are being called as Slavic tribes. These are descendants of Slavic tribes, and the origin of Slav people, Slavic tribes, is associated with the Northern Europe. These originated from those areas, and after migrations, they expanded in Eastern Europe and other areas of Europe, Eastern Europe, and some part of the Central Europe, and then we can see in some countries of Southern Europe. So let's move to the Russian history. Russian history starts with the establishment of the Rus. Establishment of the Rus. It was called Rus in that days. In the north in 862 AD, ruled by Varangians. So Varangians were actually lords or the people from the north, and these were from the Scandinavian countries, particularly from Sweden and the Norway. So these are also known as Vikings. So basically, Vikings were the key people or the people who started to establish Rus, and then uh, story continues. In 882, Prince Oleg of Novgorod seized Kiev, thereby uniting the northern and southern lands of eastern slaves under one authority. The first organized state which was established by these slaves or slaves people was Kievan Rus. So first Russian state was established East Slavic tribes in 18th century. It was known as Kievan Rus. Current like capital city of the Ukraine was the center of these all tribes or these all uh, Slavic tribes, and their organized state or the state they established was named as Kievan Rus. Kievan Rus ultimately disintegrated as a state due to the Mongol invasion in 1237 to 1240, along with the resulting deaths of significant number of population. So you can understand now that as Putin says that we are one Ukrainians and Russians. So we can say that they are one like Arabs. There are around more than 15, around 20 states of Arabs, and by origin, their language and their history was started from one starting point. Even uh, they are by language and by origin of their nation, they are one, but they have so many states. So we can't justify an invasion by saying this that because we were one, because we were started like one nation, so one part of that nation has right to attack over second or other part of the nation or other part of that tribe. So I would like to say that maybe and obviously uh, people of Russia and Ukraine and Belarus and other states were one in a time, but it's not necessarily necessary to have a single state for them. It's a right of people to have one, two, or more than two states, even if they are uh, even if they are one nation or even they speak single language. So it's right of the people to have a state or to decide that whether they want to live in a single principality or in a nation or they want to live separate. So self-determination is basic right of people. So as the right of Russians, so as the right of Ukraine. So we can't decide for people what they want to choose or what they have to choose. So I just wanted to tell you that how these East slaves were originated and how the state of Russia was originated. And after that, Russian state and then it became Russian Empire, been expanding eastwards and southwards repeatedly. And the states of original or like indigenous Turkic Turk tribes were seized by these slaves of these Slavic tribes. So there were so many states or so many principalities and city states of Turk tribes in Siberia and Far East Asia, particularly in current northern Russia. So there are so many states which been seized, which been invaded and destroyed by current Russians. So and they were known as slaves in those times. So these were Slavic tribes. So Russian history is actually more or less is similar to the history of other European powers, how they colonized the world and how they suppressed other nations in Africa, Asia, and Americas. Same way was utilized by Russian Empire. They invaded Siberia and they invaded city states and like tribes of indigenous tribes of Siberia and other places. So they had killed and they had destroyed lives of those people. So they are repeating same story here. They are repeating same thing which was witnessed by the people long ago. In Ukraine, we can see same situation. So let's discuss about this invasion. So this map shows that how Slavic tribes are distributed, and this is the map of Eastern Europe. You can see this dark green color shows the areas which were controlled by the Eastern Slavic tribes, and this color shows the Western tribes of West Slavic people, and this is the South Slavic areas. So this map belongs to 7th and 8th century, and this map shows that which areas are particularly occupied by the Eastern Slavic tribes, and their center was Kiev, current capital city of Ukraine. So now you can see the total territory of Slavic tribes was this. These were the tribes, these were the people who controlled Eastern European areas, and all areas of current Eastern Russia, Central Russia, and Northern Russia were under control of independent indigenous tribes of Siberia and other areas. So those in those times, most of territory of current Russia was controlled by or was under the authority of indigenous tribes of those areas. But after 13th and 14th century and then onwards, these Slavic tribes, which been called as Russians, then expanded repeatedly, and they controlled all the areas of Siberia and Far East Asia, which were once under the control or under the authority of free and independent indigenous Turk tribes. So let's discuss about the current history of the Russian and Ukrainian relations. After Soviet Union's collapse in 1991, the successor states' bilateral relations have been undergone periods of ties, tensions, and outright hostility. In the early 1990s, Ukraine's policy was dominated by aspirations to ensure its sovereignty and independence, followed by a foreign policy that balanced cooperation with the EU, Russia, and other powerful polities. Despite these challenges, Ukraine remained in political influence of Russia till 2014. Relations between the two countries have been hostile since. the 2014 Revolution of Dignity, sponsored by Western countries as they sponsored so-called revolutions in Libya, Syria, and Egypt to topple independent leadership. So these are the allegations by Russia and its allies that the revolution of dignity was sponsored by Western countries, as they have been sponsoring revolutions in Libya, Syria, Egypt. And they had sponsored revolution in Afghanistan in late 70s, 80s. So let's move on. Which toppled Ukraine's elected president Viktor Yanukovych and his supporters because he refused to sign a political association and free trade agreement with the European Union that enjoyed majority support in Ukraine's parliament. Ukraine's post-revolutionary government wished to commit the country to a future within the EU and NATO rather than continue to play the delicate diplomatic game of balancing its own economic and security interests with those Russia, EU, and the NATO members. So we can say the public opinion in the 2014 was in the favor of EU, and the EU countries, most of EU countries were not willing to adopt or to include Ukraine in European Union or NATO. Even even after the refusal, or even after lack of interest by the European and American allies or members of those countries, Ukraine was eager, Ukraine was willing to join EU and NATO. And it is being said that behind the bars or behind the door, America and other countries were trying to include Ukraine in the NATO, and they were offering them to join NATO. That was the boiling point, and that was a point which envied Russia. So now we will try to understand the causes of Russian invasion on Ukraine. So according my perception or my perspective, there are two contexts to be focused. There are two types of causes. First one is the political or strategic, and second one is economic. These are two types of causes which ignited this conflict and which ignited this issue to become an invasion. So let's discuss political or strategic first. Expansion of NATO toward Eastern Europe. The first political or strategic cause of this war or this invasion is expansion of NATO toward Eastern Europe. NATO, or North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was developed in Cold War era to resist Soviet Union and tighten security of capitalist countries, particularly countries of North America and Western Europe. Initially, there were 12 members in 1949, and 4 other members joined NATO till 1980s. So even till 1980s, total members of NATO were 16. NATO lost its basic reason of existence after dissolution of Soviet Union, but Western Bloc not only let it live, but many more new nations from Eastern Europe were included in this defense alliance. So this is the point to understand. This is the point to be noted as a student of international politics or the viewers, or we must try to understand that if Soviet Union was disintegrated, there was no any like communist threat to Western bloc, then why Western countries let live the NATO? NATO alliance had to be disintegrated uh, because the base or the cause which led these countries to furnish or to formulate a security alliance for their security was dead, was disintegrated. It was Soviet Union which was disintegrated. So there was no reason to let it live. Even there was no reason, but America and its allies let it live, and they continued this alliance. This strategy of expansion apparently proved that Western countries had decided to use NATO as defense, leverage, and a prominent military alliance against Russia. That's the reason NATO expanded, and 14 more members were included from Central and Western Europe from 1919 to 2020. So in these around 21 years, uh, NATO alliance expanded, and 14 more new members were included. And second reason of this war is Ukrainian refusal to join CSTO. So you should know about the CSTO. It's like NATO. It's a security alliance of former members of the Soviet Union. Russian officials and CSTO secretary generals have been revealing that Ukraine was invited by Russia and CSTO to join Collective Security Treaty Organization for its security, which was never taken serious. CSTO is a military alliance of former republics of Soviet Union. More or less, CSTO was organized on strategic model of former Warsaw Pact Treaty Organization or Alliance. Repeated refusal of Ukraine to join CSTO is one of basic point to ignite mistrust between Russia and Ukraine. So, as you know, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union before disintegration of the Soviet Union. So all other members of uh, former republics of the Soviet Union joined the CSTO. So, as like others, Ukraine was invited by Russia and other members of CSTO to join CSTO, but it refused repeatedly to join this alliance, which created more mistrust between Ukraine and Russia. So this is the list of countries which were included after 1999, and this is the whole list. Like Poland joined, Poland, Kazakhstan, or Czech Republic, Hungary, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Romania, Slovenia, Albania, Croatia, Montenegro, and North Macedonia. These all countries joined NATO after 1999, and these are the dates when these countries joined. So you can understand that the policy to contain Russia continued. So it became apparently open and apparently clear that the NATO was not only to contain Soviet Union, but it was against Russia. So that's the reason Russia has been repeatedly trying to take this issue before various countries like America and other countries, that Russia has been trying to say that they must stop this and they must stop expanding NATO. So third reason is Ukraine's proposed inclusion in NATO. As I told you that NATO has been already included 14 additional members even after repeated protest of Russia. These all NATO members host military bases, missile launch systems, and other military hardware which concerns Russian security. Same as USA was going to start a nuclear war in retaliation of Soviet missile installations in Cuba in 1962 during Cuban Missile Crisis. The people who know the history of Cold War era, they must know or they must remember that there was a time when Russia and America were on the verge of nuclear war. And the reason behind that hostility at that time was Cuban Missile Crisis. Actually, America had installed some batteries of missiles in Turkey and other countries. So in retaliation of those acts, Soviet Union installed missiles in Cuba, which is very close to Miami and Florida and other states of USA. So it was close to USA. So they were on the verge of nuclear war. So after hostile months or after repeatedly repeated talks and negotiations, and after pressure of other Western and Asian countries, they halted their initiatives or their intentions to fight each other. But it was a difficult time for both countries. Same condition is for Russia nowadays. The concerns which were felt by America in 1962, these same concerns are being described by Putin and other Russians, that NATO allies are expanding and they are repeatedly expanding, and they will have military installations and they will have missile systems closely to the border of Russia. So these things must stop, and if Ukraine joins this alliance, there will be around 2,000 kilometers, like 2,295 kilometers of insecure border with security threat. So that's the reason that Russia is more concerned about it. Even before the inclusion of Ukraine, there are 3 NATO members which directly border Russian soil. After Ukrainian inclusion, number will be increased up to 4. Note, we must consider one more thing. Total length of current NATO member countries with Russian border is less than 1,000 kilometers, and Ukraine alone has total border length of 2,295 kilometers. It means Russia will have to protect 2,295 kilometers of additional border strictly after Ukraine's inclusion in NATO. So this is the security concern of Russia, which is not being addressed by Western countries or Western media properly, that why Russia looks so aggressive. So these are the points, or these are the causes, we must understand the story of this invasion or the issues like behind this whole hostility. So let's move to the next slide. So these are the countries or bordering countries with Russia. So I would like to tell you that this is the border of Norway. Norway is a member of NATO, and then it is Estonia and Latvia. These are already members of NATO. So Russia is already concerned about these countries, that these bordering countries are directly connected or placed with Russian border. So they are already concerned with these border. So if Ukraine becomes member of NATO, then this whole border will become issue for Russia, because they feel or they express their security concern. Then if NATO, direct member of NATO countries are with the border of Russia, they will have security concerns because of their hostilities. Second type of causes is economic causes. Ukraine remained one of key Russian economic partners since 1991. Russian exports to Ukraine were $6.6 billion in 2019, and Ukrainian exports were $4.69 billion of goods. About 40% of the 200 billion cubic meters of gas that Russia has sent to Europe annually has been transmitted via Ukraine's vast network of pipelines. Therefore, Russia and Ukraine have signed a 5-year deal in 2019, $7 billion deal on the transit of Russian natural gas to Europe. In short, Ukraine earned billions of dollars from Russian gas transit, and Russia was able to safely sell its natural gas to Europe via Ukraine if Ukraine had no intention to join NATO. Despite huge economic benefits, Ukraine was played or tricked by Western countries in the name of free trade, security assurances, and EU NATO memberships. Ukrainian inclusion in NATO and EU zone will bring new challenges for Russia to export its gas via Ukraine. So if Ukraine became member of the NATO, it will have more challenges and more issues to transit its natural gas via Ukraine. So this was the economic concern of Russia. So it is one of key causes of this conflict. So you can see these are the pipelines like Yamal Europe, Soyuz pipeline, Brotherhood pipeline. These are the pipelines which enters Europe, which enter in the Europe, and these are the sources of Russian gas to Europe. And you can see the Nord Stream pipeline. Nord Stream 2 was about to start, but Germany has halted its works after the Russian invasion. So I had to tell you that 40% of Russian natural gas exports is via Ukraine. So these pipelines are the source of those all exports. So now you should understand that how Europe is dependent on Russian gas. Important of Russian gas for Europe. more than 40% of European gas is imported from Russia. It means around half of European gas consumption is dependent on Russia. Czechia or Kazakh Czech Republic is 100% dependent on Russian gas. Moldova, Latvia, these all three countries are purely 100% dependent on Russian gas. And then Hungary is around 95%. Their dependency is 95%. And then there are other countries like Slovakia 85%, Bulgaria 75%, Serbia 69%, Finland 67%, and Germany 65%, Poland 54%, Romania 44%, Italy 43%, Lithuania 41%. So this chart shows that how European countries are dependent on Russian gas. There are other countries also which are being importing their gas from Russia, but I have listed like top 13 countries which are dependent on Russian gas. So now we will try to understand that how Ukraine is important for the West. Number one cause of Ukrainian importance is Ukraine holds 39 trillion cubic feet of proven gas reserves as of 2017, ranking 23rd in the world, and according for about 1% of the world's total natural gas reserves. Ukraine has proven reserves equivalent to 35 times of annual consumption. It means Ukraine can reduce gas dependency of Europe on Russia. Second, Ukraine has over 2,000 kilometer border with Russia, which is an opportunity for NATO to pressurize Russia through security concerns. Like even if Russia, if NATO members start to install few batteries on the border of Ukraine along with the Russian border, then there will be so many security concerns of Russia, and they will be consumed by those security concerns, and they will not be able to like focus on other things. So this looks like an important opportunity for the West that if Ukraine becomes member of NATO, then they will have this opportunity to exploit. So that's the reason Ukraine is one of most strategically important countries for Western Europe. And there is one other reason that Ukraine is one of last strongholds of Russia in Eastern Europe. And then Ukraine is largest route of Russian gas supply to Europe. Western countries know this thing that Ukraine is important for Russia. So they want to exploit that weak point. And last one is West can use Ukrainian anger against Russia, because even before this war, Russia has already annexed Crimea and 2 Ukrainian eastern oblasts. So they want to exploit Ukrainians by utilizing their anger against Russia for their own interest. So now let's discuss Russian or Ukrainian war 2022. Russia has annexed, controlled around 20% of Ukrainian territory till date. More than there are various estimates, but we will try to discuss here average casualties around 500 to 8 or 5,000 to 8,000 deaths of soldiers on both sides. These are average estimates. 364 civilian deaths. This is minimum death toll of civilians. Few sources are like telling the death toll about 1,000, but I don't think that much people died in the war. But more than 300 civilian deaths have been reported, and 759 wounded confirmed. UNHCR believes that the real figures are considerably higher. Maybe you're right. Over 2 million people are refugees now, and over 1.6 million are being internally displaced. Russia and Ukraine has lost billions of dollars in 2 weeks war, and it is anticipated that this war will result loss of hundreds of billions of dollars. If this war continues in few more months, then it can result economic loss of hundreds of billions of dollars. So this is a May before Russian invasion of Ukraine 2022. So this southern colored area is Crimea, which has been annexed by Russia in 2014. And these eastern areas were already under de facto control of Russian supported troops or Russian supported rebels. So now we'll try to understand how Russia has controlled additional area after this invasion. So this is a map for you that they had Russian troops had attacked from 3 sides. This is the first side from south, from Crimea, and from eastern side, from Russian territory, and from northern side. And they had attacked from 2 sides of the north. First group was from their own territory, from Russia, and the second was from Belarus. So these areas, these all areas are under control of Russia now, and around 20% or more or less, more than 20% area of Russia is under control of more than 20% area of Ukraine is under control of Russia after 24th February's invasion. So I want to show you a few clicks of this war. So you can see how war is resulting destruction. No war brings peace. No war brings peace. No war brings any good or any betterment for people. War always brings destruction, death, sufferings, losses, and these all things. So at the end of this discussion, I would like to say that whatever you think about Russia or Ukraine, whatever you think about West or East, whatever you think about Eastern Europe or Western Europe, it's your own choice what you think. We are not here to discuss ideologies. We are not here to discuss alliances. We are not here to discuss how you feel for Ukrainians or Russians, or how you think or what you have decided, or what are your conclusions about the government of Ukraine or Russia. Maybe they have been playing with each other. Maybe they have not played well as they had to be. So this war was initiated. But above all these all discussions, humanity comes first. Peace comes first. Putin is doing same thing as their counterparts of NATO countries, particularly America has been doing since 7 decades. Invasions, and invasions. So Putin has been criticizing West because of their aggressive policies and the policies of suppressing other countries or nations. Same thing is done by the Putin. Same thing is repeated by the Putin. Maybe we can criticize Ukrainian diplomacy or Ukrainian policy. Maybe we can criticize NATO's provoking acts or provocations. But war is not the solution of this. If Ukraine is not member of CSTO, if Ukraine is not member of Russian alliance, it doesn't mean that Ukrainians deserve that. If Russia is not able to convince Ukraine to be on its side, or even Ukraine offers NATO to have military installation on its soil, even in that condition, Russia or any other country has no right to invade sovereign state of Ukraine, because national sovereignty is basic right of each state. And then right of self-determination, right of choice is basic right for every nation, for every group of people. So no one can exploit or no one can violate that right. This right being violated by NATO members in last 7 decades repeatedly, that is condemnable. So if NATO is doing, have been doing a bad thing, it doesn't mean that Russia should do same thing. Anything bad, anything negative, which is condemnable, shouldn't happen, shouldn't occur. So I think at the end of this discussion, I would say that this war or this crisis or this conflict will become more difficult and will bring more sufferings for the people of Ukraine. So it should end, and we all should raise voice for the people of Ukraine, for the people of Russia, because I know majority of Russians are not in the favor of this invasion of this war or this hostility, and vast majority of Ukrainians, absolute majority of Ukrainians wants peaceful solution, peaceful resolution of this conflict. So we should try to raise voice for Ukraine, not to support NATO, not for the wishes of Western countries, particularly USA and UK, but for the betterment of Ukraine, for the betterment of Ukrainian people. Because in these in this whole scenario, in this whole difficult condition, the affectees are Ukrainian people. The affectees are the people who are being on the front line of this war or front line of this uh, conflict. So we all should raise for the voice. We all should raise voice for the peace, for the peaceful settlement of this issue. So at the end, best wishes for brave Ukrainian people. They are facing this difficult condition. We are not in the uh, like. I don't think we should promote any type of hostility. Any act of war is condemnable, and so as this act or this act of invasion is condemnable. We all should condemn this, and we all should try to reach for a peaceful resolution of this conflict. At the end, I wish best for